The Forged Vow. The scraping sound at my front door cut through the November storm like fingernails on glass. 2:14 a.m. I bolted upright in bed, heart hammering against my ribs. 20 years of marriage in Georgetown, and I'd never heard anything like it. Lydia lay beside me, perfectly still. Too still. The kind of stillness that comes from being awake but pretending otherwise. I slipped out of bed, grabbed the Louisville Slugger from underneath, and crept downstairs. The hardwood floors betrayed every step despite my caution. An envelope slid under the door, rain-soaked and ominous. Black ink spelled out "Run" in jagged letters that looked like they'd been carved with desperation. Inside, a Polaroid hit the floor face up. My wife Lydia, my brilliant, sharp-tongued real estate lawyer wife, wrapped around some man on a foggy Charleston pier. The timestamp read November 18th, 3 nights ago, during her Atlanta conference. I flipped the photo. He's not who he says. Check the attic. My hands shook as I stared at 20 years of marriage crumbling in a single image. The anniversary wine we'd shared just weeks ago turned to acid in my throat. Lydia stirred upstairs. "Alex, you okay down there?" "Just checking the door," I called back, shoving the photo into my robe pocket. Storm knocked something over. But I wasn't okay. Nothing would be okay again. I called in sick the next morning, first time in 3 years. While Lydia rushed off to depositions, I climbed into our dusty attic with a crowbar from the garage. Boxes of wedding photos mocked me from every corner. Harvard Law graduation pictures where we looked so damn young and hopeful. But behind them, hidden under moth-eaten Christmas decorations, sat a locked trunk I'd never seen before. The crowbar splintered wood and metal. Inside, stacks of letters tied with red ribbon, each one signed with a strange symbol that looked like intertwined snakes. Dr. Elias Crow's name was scrawled across every envelope. My stomach dropped. I knew that symbol, glimpsed it tattooed on Crow's wrist 6 months ago when Lydia introduced him at a dinner party as her colleague. "Alex, meet Dr. Elias Crow. He's been helping with some medical malpractice research." The letters made my skin crawl. Passionate, explicit, detailed. And recent. The latest dated just 2 weeks ago. But underneath the romance novel garbage lay something worse. A forged deed for our Charleston cottage, transferring ownership to Crow. Dated October 16th, 1 day after our anniversary trip. The same trip where Lydia had been so grateful for 20 wonderful years. I photographed everything with my phone, hands trembling. Then I found her calendar. Our shared iCloud account, perfectly legal spousal access, showed the truth in coded entries. EC Consult aligned perfectly with romantic weekend getaways. But a hidden folder revealed emails about asset transfers that made my blood run cold. This wasn't just an affair. It was theft. "How was Atlanta?" I asked over dinner that night, watching her face carefully. Lydia didn't even look up from her salmon. "Boring depositions. You know how it is." "Which firm?" A microsecond hesitation. "Henderson and Associates." I'd already called Henderson and Associates. They'd never heard of any conference. "Sounds rough," I said, cutting my steak with surgical precision. "Good thing you had that spa day to relax." Her fork stopped halfway to her mouth. "What spa day?" "Didn't you mention a spa?" "Yesterday, I thought you said." "I was in meetings all day." She recovered quickly, but that flicker of panic was enough. I smiled and changed the subject to our daughter Emily's college applications. But inside, I was already planning. Marcus Hale looked exactly like Central Casting's idea of an ex-FBI agent, grizzled, suspicious, and expensive. But my Harvard Law alumni network swore by him. "Your wife's sleeping with a heart surgeon," he said after 2 days of digging. But that's not the interesting part. We sat in his cluttered office in DuPont Circle, surrounded by case files and cold coffee. Dr. Elias Crow is under federal investigation for medical billing fraud, ghost surgeries, unnecessary procedures, Medicare kickbacks, the works. And Lydia? Marcus slid a manila folder across his desk. Her law firm has been laundering his money through property flips. Your cottage deed is just the beginning. The photos inside showed Crow meeting with shady real estate brokers in parking garages, exchanging thick envelopes. Lydia's car was visible in 3 of them. "There's more," Marcus continued. "I found a burner phone in her gym bag." He handed me a printout of text messages. My vision blurred as I read, "EC. The deed needs to go through this week. LH. Alex is getting suspicious. Maybe we should slow down. EC. Too late for cold feet now. Stick to the plan. LH. What if he finds the insurance papers? EC. He won't. And if he does, we'll deal with it." "Insurance papers?" I asked. Marcus pulled out another document. A life insurance policy in my name, with Dr. Elias Crow listed as primary beneficiary. My signature had been forged with remarkable skill. When was this filed? Last month. $2 million payout. The room spun. They weren't just stealing from me, they were planning to kill me. I sat in my car outside Crow's Foggy Bottom Clinic for 3 hours, watching him through telephoto lens. At 6:30, he emerged with a blonde woman I didn't recognize. They drove to a seedy motel in Southeast DC. My phone buzzed. Text from Lydia. "Working late again. Don't wait up." But she wasn't at the office. I'd already called. The motel room window glowed yellow. I parked across the street and aimed my phone's camera. Through the gap in the curtains, I saw them arguing. Crow gestured wildly while the blonde, definitely not Lydia, pointed at a stack of papers on the bed. Then, Lydia's BMW pulled into the lot. I watched my wife of 20 years climb the stairs to room 237, keycard in hand. She knocked twice, waited, knocked 3 times. Some kind of signal. The 3 of them huddled around those papers for 45 minutes. When Lydia finally left, she carried a briefcase I'd never seen before. I followed her home, staying 3 cars back. She beat me by 10 minutes, long enough to hide whatever was in that briefcase. "Hey, hun," I called as I entered through the garage. "How was work?" "Exhausting," she said, without looking up from her laptop. "I'm going to bed early." But I could see the reflection of her screen in the darkened window behind her. She wasn't working on legal briefs. She was browsing real estate listings in the Cayman Islands. The whispered phone call came at midnight while Lydia showered. "Is this Alex Harlan?" "Who is this?" "The person who sent you that photo. We need to meet." "How did you get this number?" "Hospital directory. I work with Dr. Crow. There's more you need to know." The woman, she had a young voice, nervous, suggested a coffee shop in Adams Morgan. Public, safe, anonymous. "Why are you helping me?" "Because what he's doing isn't just illegal. People are dying." Sarah Martinez looked like she belonged in Scrubs, not conspiracy theories. Mid-20s, earnest brown eyes, hands that shook slightly as she stirred her latte. "I'm a surgical nurse at Crow's clinic," she began. "He's been performing unnecessary heart surgeries for 3 years." "How unnecessary?" Completely. Patients with minor arrhythmias getting triple bypass. Healthy people getting pacemakers they don't need. The kickbacks from device companies alone are in the millions. My coffee went cold as she described the scope of it. Ghost surgeries where patients thought they were getting routine procedures but woke up mutilated. Falsified medical records. Patients who died from complications of surgeries they never needed. Where does my wife fit in? She's been hiding the money, creating shell companies, buying properties, moving cash offshore. But lately, Crow's been pressuring her to move faster. He thinks the feds are closing in. Are they? Sarah nodded. There's a joint task force. FBI, IRS, Health and Human Services. They're building a case. Then why? Because your wife has been embezzling from her own clients to cover the money trail. If this goes public, dozens of families will lose their life savings. The blood drained from my face. Lydia wasn't just betraying me, she was destroying innocent people. There's something else, Sarah continued. That insurance policy? Crow's been asking questions about your routine. What time you leave for work, which route you take, whether you exercise alone. He's planning to kill me. I think so, but I can't prove it. That's why I need your help. I couldn't sleep that night. Every creak of the house sounded like footsteps. Every car that passed our street made me check the locks again. Lydia lay beside me, breathing evenly. When had she become a stranger? When had the woman I'd loved for 20 years turned into someone capable of murder? I slipped out of bed and checked Emily's room. Our 17-year-old daughter slept peacefully, unaware that her mother was a criminal. How do you tell your child something like that? In my study, I opened a new file on my laptop. Evidence. Then I began documenting everything. Photos, dates, times, recordings. If they killed me, at least someone would know the truth. But I wasn't planning to be a victim. The Charleston cottage had been our sanctuary for 15 years. Weathered cedar shingles, wraparound porch, view of the harbor that made all our problems disappear, or so I'd thought. I'd driven down on a business trip while Lydia attended another fictional conference. The hidden cameras I installed, perfectly legal as the owner, were motion-activated and wireless. It took 3 days to catch them. Crow arrived first, using his own key. How long had he had that? He wandered through our home like he owned it, touching our furniture, opening our refrigerator, sleeping in our bed. Lydia came the next evening. I watched through the camera feed on my phone as they spread papers across our dining room table. The same table where Emily had done homework, where we'd hosted Christmas dinners, where I'd proposed 20 years ago. The transfer goes through Friday, Lydia said. Then we can file the insurance claim. You're sure he won't suspect anything? Alex trusts me completely. Besides, after the accident, he'll be too dead to object. They laughed. Actually laughed about murdering me. Crow pulled out a manila envelope. I've got the route mapped out. He runs the same path every morning through Rock Creek Park. There's a blind curve near the bridge where trucks can't see joggers. Make it look accidental. No evidence we were involved. That's the beauty of it. I'll be in surgery during his run. Perfect alibi. I screenshotted everything, recorded every word. Then I called Marcus. Get me everything you can on that truck route, I said. And find out who Crow knows in the freight business. You sure about this? Dead sure. Emily knocked on my study door 2 days later. Dad, can we talk? My 17-year-old daughter looked older suddenly. Worried lines creased her forehead as she sat across from my desk. Is everything okay with you and Mom? My heart clenched. Why do you ask? She's been acting weird, secretive, and you've been... She searched for the word. Distant. I wanted to tell her everything, to warn her that her mother was a criminal, but Emily needed to stay innocent for as long as possible. We're working through some things, I said carefully. Marriage stuff. Nothing for you to worry about. Is it another woman? The irony nearly broke me. No, sweetheart, it's not what you think. Because I found this in Mom's purse. She pulled out a folded note. I wasn't snooping, I swear. I was looking for gum. The handwriting was Crow's. Can't wait to start our new life together. Soon, all this will be behind us. Emily's eyes filled with tears. It is another man, isn't it? I pulled her into a hug, my mind racing. How much could I tell her? How much should she know? Your mother and I have some serious problems to work through, I said finally. But whatever happens, you're the most important thing in the world to both of us. Are you getting divorced? I honestly don't know yet. But I did know. I just didn't know if Lydia would be free to contest it. The federal task force moved faster than I'd expected. Marcus's contact at the FBI couldn't give details, but the investigation was accelerating. They're planning raids within the month, he said over encrypted phone. Multiple locations, simultaneous arrests. Good. That gives me time. Time for what? Insurance. I'd been documenting everything for weeks. Bank records, phone calls, photographs, videos. But I needed something more, a smoking gun that would destroy any chance of Lydia claiming innocence. That's when I remembered her laptop. She kept it in her briefcase, password protected but synced to our shared iTunes account. The backup files were stored in our home computer's time machine drive. It took me 6 hours to crack through her security. When I finally accessed her files, I nearly threw up. Spreadsheets detailing millions in stolen client funds. Email threads with offshore bank representatives. Architectural plans for a Cayman Islands villa already under construction. And worst of all, a detailed timeline for my murder. October 30th. Final insurance payment. November 1st, establish alibis. November 5th, execute plan. November 10th, file insurance claim. November 15th, leave country. Today was November 3rd. I didn't run my usual route that morning. Instead, I called in sick and sat in Marcus's office watching the news. Dr. Elias Crow, prominent DC cardiologist, was arrested this morning on charges of medical fraud, insurance fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder, the anchor reported. FBI agents raided his clinic and private residence as part of a larger investigation into healthcare fraud in the metropolitan area. Marcus grinned. Your anonymous tip was very thorough. What about Lydia? They picked her up at her office 20 minutes ago. Her law partner, Victor Kane, is also in custody. I felt oddly empty watching my wife's perp walk on live television. 20 years of marriage ending in handcuffs and camera flashes. How much evidence did they have? I asked. Enough. Financial records, recorded conversations, witness testimony, plus whatever Sarah provided from inside the clinic. Will it stick? Multiple federal charges, conspiracy, attempted murder. She's looking at 25 to life if convicted on all counts. My phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. Your house is under surveillance. Don't go home. Marcus. I see it. He was already pulling up security feeds on his laptop. 2 vans, unmarked. Could be feds securing the scene. Could be Crow's associates. Associates? Your wife wasn't the only lawyer laundering his money. There's a whole network, and some of them have connections to very unfriendly people. We watched my quiet Georgetown street fill with federal agents. Neighbors came out to gawk as crime scene tape surrounded my home. Where does this leave me? Alive, Marcus said, which is better than the alternative. The divorce proceedings began while Lydia sat in federal lockup awaiting trial. Her court-appointed attorney tried every angle: emotional distress, coercion, claims that I'd driven her to infidelity through neglect. None of it worked. Judge Patricia Williams had seen every trick in the book during 30 years on the bench. When Lydia's lawyer suggested that her affair was a cry for help, Williams' response was withering. "Counselor, your client attempted to defraud insurance companies, steal from her legal clients, and orchestrate the murder of her husband. This court is not interested in her emotional journey." Emily testified via closed-circuit video, protected by a court-appointed guardian. Watching my daughter describe how her mother had changed, become secretive and distant, nearly destroyed me. "She used to help with my homework," Emily said, tears streaming down her face. "But lately, she's been gone all the time. And when she was home, it felt like she was thinking about somewhere else." Lydia sat at the defendant's table, stone-faced. She'd lost weight in custody, her power suits replaced by orange jumpsuit. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Then I remembered the insurance policy with Crow's name on it. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Sarah testified about the unnecessary surgeries, the falsified records, the patients who died. Financial experts walked the jury through millions in stolen funds. FBI agents described the murder plot in clinical detail. But the most damaging testimony came from Victor Kane, Lydia's law partner. "She approached me about the arrangement," he said from the witness stand. "Said she'd found a way to make serious money from a medical contact. When I asked about the risks, she said her husband would never suspect anything. And when Dr. Crow proposed eliminating Mr. Harlan, Lydia was enthusiastic. She said it would solve all their problems at once. I watched my wife's face as her partner destroyed her. She showed no emotion, no regret, no recognition that she'd once loved me enough to marry me." The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing came a month later. Crow got 15 years in federal prison. Kane received 7 years for his cooperation. Lydia got 12 years. She looked directly at me as the judge read her sentence. For the first time since her arrest, she showed emotion. Not remorse. Rage. Pure, undiluted hatred for the man who destroyed her plans. "You did this," she mouthed silently. I mouthed back, "You earned this." Outside the courthouse, reporters shouted questions I ignored. My lawyer, a bulldog named Rebecca Torres, shielded me from the cameras. "How do you feel about the verdict, Mr. Harlan?" "Justice was served," I said simply. But that wasn't entirely true. Justice would have been Lydia never betraying our family in the first place. This was just damage control. The civil suits started immediately. Families of patients who died in Crow's unnecessary surgeries. Clients whose trust funds Lydia had raided. Insurance companies seeking restitution. I testified in dozens of depositions, each one more heartbreaking than the last. Mrs. Patterson, whose husband died from complications of a bypass surgery he never needed. The Johnsons, who lost their daughter's college fund when Lydia cleaned out their real estate escrow account. "How could you not know?" they asked. Over and over. How could I explain that the woman who'd stolen their savings had also made me coffee every morning for 20 years? That the criminal mastermind had once cried at Emily's first piano recital? I settled every claim I could, liquidating assets to make the victims whole. The Georgetown house, the Charleston cottage, my retirement accounts, all of it went to people whose lives Lydia had destroyed. Emily and I moved into a small apartment in Arlington. She handled the upheaval better than I'd expected, throwing herself into her senior year and college applications. "Dad," she said one evening while we assembled IKEA furniture, "I know this sounds terrible, but I'm almost glad it happened." "Why?" "Because now I know who my real parent is." 6 months after the trial, I opened my own law practice specializing in elder fraud. Every stolen pension, every forged deed, every victim of financial abuse reminded me why I'd chosen law in the first place. The work was satisfying in ways my corporate practice had never been. When I recovered a stolen inheritance for Mrs. Jones, or helped Mr. Rodriguez get his life savings back from a con artist, it felt like justice was actually possible. That's how I met Sarah Voss. The investigative journalist had covered Lydia's trial for the Washington Post. Her series on medical fraud won a Pulitzer nomination and helped expose a network of corrupt doctors across 3 states. "I'd like to write a book about your case," she said over coffee in DuPont Circle. "The human cost of white-collar crime." "Pseudonyms only," I insisted. "Emily's been through enough." "Of course. But I think your story could help other victims recognize the warning signs." We met weekly for 3 months, Sarah carefully extracting details I'd tried to forget. The way Lydia used to check her phone obsessively. The business trips that never appeared on her calendar. The gradual erosion of intimacy that I'd attributed to work stress. "You couldn't have known," Sarah said during one particularly difficult session. "She's a sociopath. They're designed to be undetectable." But there were signs. I just ignored them. "Because you loved her. That's not a character flaw." Somewhere during those interviews, something shifted between us. Sarah's professional interest became personal. My desire for justice became something warmer. The Forged Vow hit bestseller lists 6 months later. Sarah had written it beautifully, capturing both the crime's complexity and its emotional devastation. The book tour was exhausting but necessary. Every interview meant more awareness, more protection for potential victims. Emily came with me to the Chicago stop, proud of her old man despite everything. "Do you hate her?" an audience member asked during Q&A. "Your ex-wife?" I considered the question carefully. I hate what she did. I hate the lives she destroyed, the trust she violated, the danger she put our family in. But hate is exhausting. I'd rather focus on preventing it from happening to others. It was true. The raw fury that had sustained me during the investigation and trial had faded into something more productive. I couldn't change what Lydia had done, but I could use the experience to help others. Emily graduated valedictorian despite everything. Her speech about resilience and rebuilding brought tears to my eyes. "My family went through something that could have destroyed us," she told her classmates. "But instead, it taught us what really matters. Not money or status or perfect marriages, but honesty, courage, and love." She'd been accepted to Stanford with a full scholarship. Law school was in her future, following her father's path, but hopefully with better judgment and partners. "I'm proud of you," I told her after the ceremony. "For my grades? For becoming the kind of person who could survive what we survived and still believe in good people." She hugged me tightly. I learned that from you. Lydia's first parole hearing was scheduled for year 7 of her sentence. I had no intention of attending, but Emily surprised me. I want to give a victim impact statement, she said. Are you sure? She needs to hear what she cost us, not just you, us. The hearing lasted all morning. Lydia looked older, grayer, diminished by prison life. She'd found religion, according to her attorney, and deeply regretted her choices. When Emily approached the microphone, every person in the room leaned forward. My mother taught me many things, she began. How to be strong, how to be smart, how to fight for what I want. But the most important lesson she taught me was unintentional. She showed me exactly the kind of person I never want to become. Lydia's composure cracked for the first time. Tears streamed down her face as Emily continued. She didn't just betray my father. She betrayed every value she'd tried to teach me. Honesty, loyalty, family first. All of it was apparently just words to her. Emily paused, looking directly at her mother. I don't forgive you. Maybe someday, but not today. And I don't want you in my life until you understand that actions have consequences that last forever. Parole was denied. Sarah and I were married 2 years later in a small ceremony at the Arlington courthouse. No big reception, no elaborate vows, no expensive rings. Just 2 people who'd found love in the wreckage of betrayal. Emily walked me down the aisle, radiant in her role as best person. You sure about this one? She whispered as we approached the altar. Dead sure. Good, because I ran a full background check. I laughed despite myself. My daughter had indeed inherited my skeptical nature, along with my stubborn determination and, apparently, my investigative instincts. Marcus served as Sarah's witness, grinning as Judge Williams, now retired, performed the ceremony. Do you, Alex, take Sarah as your lawfully wedded wife, for richer or poorer, in sickness and health, forsaking all others as long as you both shall live? I do. And do you, Sarah, take Alex as your lawfully wedded husband, for richer or poorer, in sickness and health, forsaking all others as long as you both shall live? I do. Simple words, but they carried weight that my first marriage had never achieved. These vows were built on truth, tested by crisis, strengthened by shared purpose. When Judge Williams pronounced us married, Sarah whispered in my ear, "No more secrets. No more shadows," I replied. The second anonymous message came 5 years after Lydia's conviction. Not an envelope this time, but an encrypted email to my law firm account. Your investigation helped expose something bigger than you know. The corruption went all the way to the hospital board. Thank you for having the courage to speak up. A friend, I showed it to Marcus during our weekly lunch. Probably the nurse, he said. Sarah Martinez. She's working for the FBI now, helping prosecute medical fraud cases nationwide. Good for her. You ever wonder what would have happened if she hadn't sent that first photo? I'd wondered many times. Would Lydia have gone through with the murder? Would they have gotten away with it? Would Emily have grown up believing her father had died in a tragic accident? I try not to think about it, I lied. Fair enough. But for what it's worth, you handled it exactly right. Methodical, legal, devastating. I had good help. You had good instincts. Not everyone would have had the stomach for a long game like that. He was right. There had been moments during the investigation when I'd wanted to confront Lydia directly, to demand explanations and apologies, but that would have given her time to cover her tracks, destroy evidence, disappear with the money. Instead, I'd waited, documented everything, built an unshakable case brick by brick. Justice isn't a sprint, I told him. It's a marathon. Emily called from her first-year law school dormitory at Stanford, excited about her constitutional law class. "Professor Martinez assigned your case as reading," she said. "Everyone knows it's my family, so I'm like a celebrity." Good celebrity or bad celebrity? Good. They think it's cool that my dad took down a criminal conspiracy. Your mother took down a criminal conspiracy. I just documented it. Don't sell yourself short. What you did took guts. She was right. Living with a would-be murderer for months, pretending everything was normal while gathering evidence, it had required more courage than I'd known I possessed. How's law school treating you otherwise? Hard but amazing. I want to specialize in white-collar crime defense. Following in the family footsteps? The right side of the family. Sarah's new book, The Doctor's Deception, exposed the full scope of medical fraud across the healthcare system. The investigative work took her to hospitals in 12 states, documenting unnecessary surgeries that had enriched doctors while killing patients. "How many people do you think died because of Crow?" she asked one evening as we walked through our Arlington neighborhood. "The FBI stopped counting at 47 confirmed cases," I said, "but the real number is probably higher." "And if you hadn't stopped him?" "He would have kept going until someone else caught him, or until he made a mistake that couldn't be covered up." But I knew that wasn't entirely true. If Lydia had succeeded in killing me, they would have had millions in insurance money and time to perfect their system. How many more patients would have died for their profit? "You saved lives," Sarah said simply. "We all did. You, Marcus, Sarah Martinez, the FBI task force. It was a team effort, led by a man who refused to be a victim." The 10th anniversary of Lydia's conviction passed quietly. Emily was in her final year of law school, clerking for a federal judge who specialized in financial crimes. Sarah had just signed a contract for her third book, this one about corporate corruption in pharmaceutical companies. I continued my elder fraud practice, representing victims of everything from investment scams to romance fraud. The work was emotionally draining but necessary. Every recovered dollar meant dignity restored to someone who'd been betrayed by people they trusted. Lydia would be eligible for parole again in 2 years. I expected Emily to oppose it again, but my daughter had changed. "I'm not carrying that anger anymore," she told me during a holiday visit. "It was poisoning me." "Does that mean you'd support her release?" "No. But it means I don't need to be there to oppose it. The justice system can handle her without my input." She was wiser than I'd been at her age. I'd carried anger like a weapon for years, using it to fuel my investigation and prosecution. But Emily had learned to let go of toxic emotions while still maintaining healthy boundaries. "Your mother would be proud of the woman you've become," I said. "Which mother? The one who raised me, or the one who tried to murder you?" "The one who raised you. Whatever else she became, she loved you completely." Emily nodded. "That's the version I choose to remember." Marcus retired to Florida but still called monthly to check in. His final case had been helping me track down the last of Lydia's hidden assets, a safety deposit box in the Cayman Islands containing bearer bonds worth $2 million. "Enough to compensate the Patterson family for their husband and father," he said when the funds were finally repatriated. "Seems fitting. Poetic justice. The best kind." We'd worked together for 8 years by then, dismantling financial crimes and returning stolen money to victims. It was satisfying work, even if we couldn't undo the original betrayals. You ever regret not just walking away? Marcus asked during his retirement dinner. Taking Emily and starting over somewhere fresh? Never. Running would have meant letting her win. Even if it had been safer? Especially then. You can't build a life on cowardice. What about Emily? Did you ever worry about putting her through all that? I'd worried constantly. Every news story, every court appearance, every legal filing had exposed her to scrutiny and judgment. But she'd emerged stronger, more compassionate, more committed to justice than I'd dared hope. She needed to see that actions have consequences, I said. That integrity matters more than comfort. She learned that lesson well. Sarah and I celebrated our 5th wedding anniversary by taking Emily to Charleston for the weekend. We stayed at a bed and breakfast near the pier where Lydia and Crow had been photographed together a decade ago. "Doesn't it bother you?" Emily asked as we walked along the waterfront. "Being here where it all started?" "Not anymore," I said honestly. "This place has too many good memories to let her ruin them." 25 years of family vacations, romantic getaways, and peaceful weekends couldn't be erased by one act of betrayal. The cottage itself was gone, sold to pay restitution, but Charleston remained beautiful. "I'm thinking of moving here after graduation," Emily said, "opening a practice that serves rural communities. Following your conscience instead of money. Following your example." She'd grown into an extraordinary woman, principled, courageous, unafraid to fight for what was right. Whatever else Lydia had done wrong, she'd helped raise a daughter worth being proud of. "The Low Country could use more honest lawyers," I said. "The whole country could." The final chapter came unexpectedly, through a letter forwarded by the federal prison system. Lydia had written to request a meeting. "Alex, I know I have no right to ask anything of you. I know the pain I caused can never be undone. But I'm dying, and I need to say things that should have been said years ago. The cancer is aggressive. 6 months, maybe 8. I'm not asking for forgiveness or sympathy. I'm asking for 5 minutes to tell you truths I should have spoken when they might have mattered. If you can't bring yourself to come, I understand. But if there's any part of the man I married still willing to listen, I'd be grateful for one last conversation. Lydia." I showed the letter to Sarah and Emily over dinner. "You don't owe her anything," Sarah said immediately. "I know." "But you're going anyway," Emily added. "I don't know yet." That wasn't entirely true. Part of me needed to hear what she had to say, even after all these years. Not for closure, I'd found that long ago, but for completeness. "What could she possibly say that would matter now?" Sarah asked. "Maybe nothing. Or maybe something that helps me understand how 20 years of marriage could become attempted murder." Emily reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Whatever you decide, I support you." Federal Medical Center Carswell in Texas looked like every other prison. Concrete walls, razor wire, guards with hard eyes and harder questions. Lydia waited in the visitor's room, dressed in prison gray, her once lustrous hair now thin and white. Cancer had ravaged her body but left her mind sharp. She studied me as I sat across from her, separated by bulletproof glass. "You look good," she said through the intercom. "Happy." "I am." "Sarah seems wonderful. I've read her books." "Why did you ask me here, Lydia?" She leaned forward, suddenly looking every one of her 63 years. To tell you that none of it was about you. The affair, the money, even the murder plot. You were just collateral damage in something that started long before you. Explain. My father's debts. Did you know he owed money to people who don't forgive loans? I hadn't known. Lydia had rarely talked about her family. $500,000 to loan sharks in Atlantic City. They came to me after he died, said the debt transferred to his daughter. Crow offered to help if I'd help him hide his medical fraud money. So you decided to steal from our clients? I thought I could replace the money before anyone noticed. But Crow kept demanding more, and the loan sharks kept adding interest. By the time I realized I was in over my head, there was no way out. Except murdering me. Tears streamed down her face. I never wanted that. But Crow said it was the only way to get enough money to make everyone whole. You could have told me. We could have figured it out together. With what money? Your salary and mine together wouldn't have covered the interest payments. She was probably right. But that didn't justify 20 years of lies. Why didn't you just declare bankruptcy? Walk away from your father's debts? Because they would have killed Emily to send a message. The words hit me like a physical blow. Our daughter had been in danger, and I'd never known. They're all dead or imprisoned now, Lydia continued. The FBI task force rolled up the whole organization. Emily's safe. Does she know? No, and I hope she never has to. We sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, Lydia spoke again. I know this doesn't change anything. I know you'll never forgive me. But I needed you to know that I never stopped loving you. Even when I was planning to kill you, I hated myself for it. That's supposed to make me feel better? No. It's supposed to make you understand that people can love someone and still destroy them. That good people can make evil choices when they're desperate enough. Are you asking for forgiveness? I'm asking for understanding, not for me but for Emily. So she doesn't spend her whole life wondering if she inherited her mother's capacity for evil. She didn't. She's nothing like you. She's exactly like me. Brilliant, stubborn, willing to fight for the people she loves. That's why I'm terrified for her. I looked at this woman who'd shared my bed for 20 years, who'd given birth to my daughter, who'd tried to have me murdered for insurance money. She was right about Emily. Our daughter had inherited the best and worst traits from both of us. What do you want me to tell her? That I'm proud of who she's becoming, and that I'm sorry I couldn't be the mother she deserved. You were, for a long time. Not long enough. I drove straight from the prison to the airport, caught the red-eye to DC, and arrived home as Sarah was making coffee. How was it? She asked without turning around. Harder than I expected. Did she explain anything that mattered? She explained everything, which somehow makes it worse. I told Sarah about the loan sharks, the threats against Emily, the impossible choice between family and crime. None of it justified what Lydia had done, but it made her actions comprehensible in a way they'd never been before. Do you forgive her? Sarah asked. No, but I understand her. Is there a difference? A huge one. Forgiveness requires trust, and I'll never trust her again. But understanding means I can stop hating her. That's probably healthy. It's necessary, for Emily's sake, if nothing else. Lydia died 6 weeks later, alone in the prison medical facility. Emily and I attended a small memorial service in Texas, along with 2 other family members I'd never met. I keep thinking I should feel something, Emily said, as we walked through the prison cemetery. but mostly I just feel empty. That's normal. Grief is complicated when the person hurt you. Did she really love us? In her way, yes. But love isn't enough when it's not backed up by good choices. We stood at the grave marker, a simple metal plaque with her name and dates, and said nothing for several minutes. I forgive her, Emily said finally. You don't have to. I know, but I'm tired of carrying anger for someone who can't apologize anymore. At 25, my daughter was wiser than I'd been at 45. She'd learned to distinguish between forgiveness and trust, between understanding and excusing, between love and loyalty. Your mother would be proud of that choice, I said. Both my mothers, I hope. 5 years later, Emily's law practice in Charleston was thriving. She specialized in family law and criminal defense, helping people navigate the legal system's complexities with compassion and skill. Sarah's latest book, The Price of Silence, examined how financial desperation drives ordinary people to commit extraordinary crimes. It spent 6 months on bestseller lists and sparked national conversations about predatory lending and organized crime. I continued my elder fraud practice, now with 3 associate attorneys and a full-time investigator. We recovered millions annually for victims of financial crimes, and several of my cases had led to federal prosecutions. The work was demanding but fulfilling. Every client reminded me why I'd chosen law in the first place, not for money or prestige, but to help people fight against injustice. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd made different choices? A law school graduate asked during a career panel discussion. Different how? If you'd confronted your ex-wife directly instead of investigating secretly. If you'd tried to save your marriage instead of building a case against her. She was planning to murder me. There was no saving that marriage. But what if you'd given her a chance to explain? To make amends? The question bothered me more than it should have. Had I been too quick to assume the worst? Too focused on justice to consider mercy? Some betrayals can't be forgiven, I said finally, and some people can't be trusted to change. But driving home that evening, I wondered if I'd been right. Would Lydia have chosen differently if I'd given her the opportunity? Or would she have simply gotten better at hiding her crimes? I'd never know. And maybe that was okay. Emily's wedding took place on a perfect Charleston morning in the gardens of the historic courthouse. Her fiancé, David, was a pediatric surgeon she'd met during a medical malpractice case. They'd been on opposite sides, but found common ground in their commitment to protecting children. At least this one saves lives instead of ending them, Emily had joked when she introduced us. Walking her down the aisle, I thought about all the moments Lydia had missed. Law school graduation, first apartment, career success, and now this. She'd traded everything that mattered for money that had ultimately been recovered and redistributed anyway. You okay, Dad? Emily whispered as we approached the altar. Perfect. You? Never better. Judge Williams, now in her 80s but still sharp as a razor, performed the ceremony with dignity and warmth. When she asked who gives this woman to be married, I said clearly, her family does, with love and pride. Emily's eyes sparkled with tears as David slipped the ring onto her finger. Their vows were simple but heartfelt, promises to love, honor, and support each other through whatever challenges life might bring. You may kiss the bride, Judge Williams announced. As the couple embraced, I felt a hand slip into mine. Sarah squeezed gently, her own eyes moist with emotion. She's beautiful, she whispered. She's perfect. And she was. Despite everything she'd endured, Emily had grown into a woman of integrity, compassion, and strength. She'd chosen love over anger, hope over cynicism, truth over convenience. Whatever mistakes I'd made as a father, I'd raised a daughter worth celebrating. The reception was small but joyful. Close friends, family, and colleagues sharing good food and better conversation. Emily's maid of honor, her law school roommate, gave a toast that made everyone laugh and cry. "Emily is the strongest person I know," she said, raising her champagne glass. "She's faced challenges that would break most people, but instead of becoming bitter, she became better. Instead of giving up on love, she chose to love more deeply. David, you're getting someone extraordinary." As the evening wound down, Emily pulled me aside for a private moment. "Thank you," she said simply. "For what?" "For showing me what integrity looks like. For fighting for justice even when it was hard. For proving that good people can survive bad situations and come out stronger." "You proved that yourself." "I learned it from watching you." We hugged tightly as the last guests departed. My little girl, now a successful attorney and married woman, was everything I'd hoped she'd become, and more. "I love you, Dad." "I love you too, sweetheart. More than you'll ever know." As Sarah and I drove back to our hotel, I reflected on the strange journey that had brought us here. A decade earlier, I'd discovered my wife's betrayal through an anonymous photograph. Tonight, I'd watched my daughter marry the love of her life in front of family and friends who'd supported us through the darkest period of our lives. Justice wasn't just about punishment. It was about restoration. About rebuilding what had been broken and creating something better from the wreckage. Lydia had destroyed our family through her choices. But Emily, Sarah, and I had built a new one based on truth, trust, and unconditional love. "What are you thinking about?" Sarah asked as we reached our hotel. "How strange life is. How the worst thing that ever happened to me led to some of the best things. No regrets? About stopping her? Never. About marrying her in the first place?" I considered the question carefully. Without Lydia, there would be no Emily. So no, I don't regret that part. Even knowing how it ended? Especially knowing how it ended. Emily needed to see that actions have consequences, that justice matters, that good people don't have to be victims. Sarah nodded. She definitely learned those lessons. As we entered our hotel room, I thought about the future Emily and David would build together. They'd face challenges, every marriage did, but they'd face them honestly, with open communication and mutual respect. The cycle of betrayal and revenge that had defined my first marriage was over. Emily would write a different story with her life, one based on the values Lydia had taught her before greed corrupted her judgment. That was the real victory, not the criminal convictions or recovered assets, but raising a daughter who chose integrity over convenience, love over hate, truth over comfort. "Ready for bed?" Sarah asked. "More than ready." As I turned off the lights, I smiled at the thought of Emily and David beginning their honeymoon tomorrow. They'd travel to Greece, a destination Lydia and I had always planned to visit but never found time for. Emily would see those ancient ruins with fresh eyes and an honest heart. She'd build memories with someone who loved her for who she was, not what she could provide. That was worth every sleepless night, every painful revelation, every difficult choice I'd made during the investigation. Emily was free. Free from her mother's shadow, free from the burden of unanswered questions, free to love without fear. Justice, I realized, wasn't just about punishment. It was about liberation, and sometimes it was worth waiting for.